Hey, welcome back. Congressional briefings on Iran have been postponed until later this week. The House and Senate were supposed to receive those classified briefings today, but they've been rescheduled to allow Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to return from the NATO summit to attend. This all comes as questions still remain about the intelligence used to justify this weekend's strikes on Iranian nuclear sites and intelligence to back up President Trump's claims that the strikes totally obliterated those nuclear facilities. It also comes as lawmakers remain focused on President Trump's domestic agenda, with Republicans trying to pass the president's big, beautiful bill before the July 4th recess less than 2 weeks from now. The president posting on social media today, "No one goes on vacation until it's done." So I'm joined now by Congressman Greg Steube, Republican from Florida and a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, good to see you.
So the president has insisted that Iran's nuclear facilities have been totally obliterated, as we mentioned, but CNN and the New York Times are reporting that an initial classified U.S. report assesses that this weekend's strikes set back Iran's nuclear program by just a few months. So the White House, as we said, is pushing back against those reports. But what do you know about that assessment, and what's your reaction if it's true?
Well, I can't speak directly to the intelligence reports, but what the president has said is that they're obliterated. What you heard the IAEA, one of the UN individuals, saying that there was significant damage. I think it's going to take time. It's going to take time for DOD and the Pentagon to come up with their battle assessments and their battle damages. And then once that's done, they'll probably make that public to the American people.
And Congressman, there are satellite images of trucks outside of Fort O 2 days before the U.S. strike. So do we have proof that the enriched uranium was actually in the facility when we struck it?
You know, there's been open source reporting about that. We in the Intelligence Committee have not been specifically briefed on that issue. But that's something that obviously once we get those battle damage assessments from the Pentagon, that'll be something that I would imagine the Pentagon and Secretary Hegseth is going to want to make available to the public after they're declassified and ensured that all the information is accurate.
And Congressman, I want to ask you about how close Iran was to getting a nuclear weapon. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, said in March that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, or at least the Supreme Leader had not authorized it. Senator Warner of the Senate Intelligence Committee said last week that he was briefed and that the intelligence had not changed. So was the U.S. intelligence community wrong?
Look, the president was very clear that they were close, I think is what the president said publicly. Obviously, the Israelis have taken action before the United States took action for a variety of reasons that you'd have to ask the Israelis. But I think I would tend to lean on what the president has said publicly on that issue. And we'll have to wait and see if there's other intelligence reports that are made public after that time.
And did the intelligence that President Trump relied on to decide to strike Iran, did that intelligence come from Israel?
I can't comment on that because I don't know. You'd have to ask the president that question. We get different briefings than what the president does, typically very after the fact. We get the briefings that the president does. So he's got real-time information that's going on at that point in time. And obviously in the Situation Room, he has the ability to get real-time intelligence from wherever he needs to get that intelligence from. So I'd have to direct those questions to the White House.
All right, fair enough. Are you concerned about Iran covertly reconstituting its nuclear program in the future now?
The president seems pretty sure on this truce that we're currently working ourselves through. Obviously, the best thing for the Iranian people is peace in the Middle East and not being furthering some type of nuclear program. Every president, like the last 4 presidents, have all said that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. And we finally had a president that was bold enough to act on that and ensure that Iran didn't have nuclear capabilities. So I commend the president for doing that. And we'll just have to wait and see what the Iranians decide to do. But based on reporting, it appears that they want to go into this truce for this period of time, which would be great.
Congressman, what is the biggest question you'd like answered when the administration briefs House members later this week?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that obviously you're asking us about is battle damage assessment. I think that's going to be top on the mind of members of Congress. We want to know what was hit, because obviously there's being reporting on differing varying issues on that, whether how much of it was taken out. So I think that's probably going to be the first question. I would imagine Secretary Hegseth's probably going to address that at the forefront as to what we specifically hit. And what that battle damage assessment is. So that's probably another reason why, other than the fact that they were at the NATO summit, to give those Pentagon officials time to come up with a very accurate battle damage assessment that they can then give to members of Congress.
Congressman, turning now to the president's domestic agenda and his so-called big, beautiful bill. The president posted on social media today that no one goes on vacation until it's done. Are you willing to cancel next week's recess to work with the Senate on getting that deal across the finish line?
Look, I'm committed to getting the president's priorities and the one big beautiful bill done as soon as possible. Right now it's in the hands of the Senate, and I don't have any idea of how long it's going to take them. I don't know if the Senate knows when they're going to be able to pass that bill and send it back over to the House. And then the question is going to be, once we get that bill, are we just going to put it on the floor and vote it out with the Senate changes? Are we going to have the votes to do that? Are we going to go into conference? And obviously all of that's going to take some time. So we can't make any moves on the House side until the Senate sends it over for us.
And what potential changes in the Senate version of the bill would be a red line for you?
For me, I love the SALT changes. I was a big opponent of increasing the SALT limit because that's only helping big tax states like New York, New Jersey, and California. It's very bad tax policy to reward bad behavior in high tax areas and then give those people a credit. So you've got people in New York who are paying less in federal income tax because they have a high state and local income tax. So I like what they did on SALT, but they went backwards on the different Green New Deal type of provisions that got much more moderate than what I would like. But at the end of the day, the core principles of TCJA and reauthorizing and making permanent Trump's Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is something that we have to get done for the American people.
And Congressman, I want to switch the conversation a little bit to your home state of Florida. State officials there plan to build a detention center for migrants on the grounds of an old airport in the Everglades. They're calling the detention center, nicknaming it Alligator Alcatraz, because it's surrounded by alligators and other dangerous wildlife. First of all, what's your reaction to the plan? Is it necessary?
Well, they just left session, so they're done for the year. They got done with their budget. I've seen reporting on this, but I don't know specifics on it, so I can't really comment specifically on what the state legislature is doing. It's been several years since I've been in the state legislature.
Right. Well, in more of a larger sense, the Department of Homeland Security is confirming this. They're saying that it could cost up to some $450 million a year, that the state could apply for reimbursement from FEMA, and that it's all part of the president's mass deportation plan. On that, with those details, do you think that this is a good idea for your home state?
Well, I 100% support the president's deportation efforts. Joe Biden let 12 million illegals come into our country, criminals, gang members, terrorists, murderers, and it's the president's priority to get those individuals out of our country, and I 100% support that.
Congressman Steube of Florida, thank you so much for your time today.
Yep, good to see you.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.